Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Today, we are here to propose that early education is much like improv comedy.
Amen, sister. I'm telling you. It is very much like that.
It's much like it. There are definitely comical moments. I think we are very fortunate to work in a world with young children, and that provides a lot of comedy all the time. Children are so funny and witty, and they say things with the innocence of childhood that just crack me up all the time. Yeah. A teacher told me a story recently, and I'll just share it. I don't remember if I've shared it before on another episode, so I'll just share it now as part of the improv comedy topic that we're doing today. Teacher shared with me that a student did something well, and she went over to her young 3.5-year-old student and said something about how well they did what they were doing. You know, oh, look at you. You're putting the puzzle together so nicely. I really like the way you did that. And the student turned around and said, please like and subscribe.
Oh my God, 3.5 years old. How do you even know what that means? But that's amazing.
Because we watch a lot of YouTube, apparently, in the house.
Yes.
At home. And let's face it, children were watching YouTube for sure during lockdowns and stuff.
Yes, that's true.
You know, okay. So the child did. Turned around and said, please like and subscribe. Yeah. So she had to tell me, we weren't talking about that. She just had to tell me that story when I spoke to her. I said, that is fantastic.
Really funny. Yeah.
Both frightening and fantastic.
Yeah.
So funny things are happening all around us all the time, but that's not the only way in which it is like improv comedy. When you speak to people who do improvisational acting, they tell you that the key to it is to just accept what the other person does and add to it, right? They call it yes and. Whatever they do, it's yes and this, which is sort of how I see my life. Right. And whenever I talk about things like we've talked about in the past, having to do with conversations with families, I'm always saying it's like improv comedy. It's yes and. Whatever we're trying to create partnerships, whatever the family says, it's yes, that's wonderful. And here's what goes on in my classroom.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the same way with children, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. It is yes and to the children. I know that we have a lot to do. We have assessments, and we have standards, goals, and objectives to observe. We have lesson plans. We have curriculum to adhere to. We have standards. Maybe you're part of your state's quality rating and improvement system. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're a NACE accredited program. Whatever it is you're being judged on, we've got all that. We've got the early childhood environmental rating scales. We've got the class assessment of interactions. We have teapot and all sorts of, sorts of things that if you're not an early educator right now, you don't know what I'm talking about, but we have all sorts of measurements and rules about what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot going on there. A lot for a teacher to think about during the day. You know, a lot of that is all running through your head all at once, but it's also important to kind of have flexibility all within those little avenues that we are traveling down all at once, you know, and also always make sure it goes back to the children.
To you.
Yes. Always go back to the children. Yes. So, yeah.
It needs to go back to the children, and it needs to go back to several things about the children. First of all, when a child says something, it should always be yes and. It's the child says something and we try and build, right? I'm not going to negate if they're wrong or if they've made a mistake or they've made a decision that isn't so great. We're going to just try and teach an important lesson. So that's yes and. And that includes very challenging behavior. When children exhibit challenging behavior, they are crying out for help. So it's like a yes and. It's I see you. I see that you need something. And here's how I'm going to deal with that. But in the course of everyday interactions, it's the same. You could be doing something like talking about winter. I'm just randomly picking a topic. You could be doing something like talking about winter, and all of a sudden a child starts talking about their dog.
Yes.
In prior, happens all the time. In a prior life, before we knew better, we would simply look at these children and be like, you're off topic, or we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But because we're always supposed to be reacting with a yes and, I question whether that is right. I know we're supposed to steer to the topic.
Yeah. See, I feel like those off topics, that's where the money is. Like, I feel like, because they're so like, yeah, all right. Yeah. We're talking about winter and you want to talk about your dog. But to me, like talking and almost pivoting and talking about the dog, now, instead of denying that person, if I can engage them in a conversation, even if it's a short one about the dog, now I've developed more of a relationship with them, I feel, because now we're sharing what our lives are about, right? He wants to talk about his dog. I have a dog. Maybe somebody else has a dog. And yeah, you're going to get totally off topic sometimes. But you might eventually be able to relate it back to the winter, I was
like going to say, relate it back. Yeah. Take this child's desire to talk about the dog and relate it back. Like, if the child all of a sudden is like, you know what my dog did the other day? And starts talking about what their dog did. Yeah. I would acknowledge what the child said and say, oh, that's really funny. Do you ever play with your dog outside in the winter when it's really cold? I would try to bring it back. I agree that we need to teach children to listen, to think about what the topic is, and to try and stick with it. At the same time, have you or have you not been in the middle of a conversation and an unrelated thought pops into your head?
Yes. Yes.
All the time. Have you or have you not? Have you or have you not been watching a television program and you're like really into this, you're binging this series, you're really into this TV show, and all of a sudden you realize you don't know what was happening because your thoughts went somewhere else. Mm-hmm. It's a very human thing to have happen.
Yeah. And I feel like adults do that a lot. Like you said, we're watching TV and our mind is wandering, or I'm one of those people, I'm like, listen, I know this is off topic, but if I don't say this right now, I'm not going to remember it 10 minutes from now. And I 100%. Think like, right. Yeah. So like, and we just accept that adults are like that. But when children do it, we're like, nope, you're off topic. Sorry. We're not talking about that right now. Like, and it's like, you shut them down. But if an adult did that to you, I do this all day long where I'm like, oh, I just blurt things out because I'm like, if I don't say this now, I won't remember it. I will absolutely not remember it. So
there are socially acceptable ways that adults have learned to do that. Like someone could be in the middle of saying something. You could just say, oh, remind me to tell you the story about XYZ when you're done.
Yes. Yes.
Right. We'll do, sometimes I will what I'll do is I will keep it inside. And now I'm only thinking about this thing I want to say. And I'm not fully listening to the other person anymore.
I'm not fully focused anymore. Yeah.
Children struggle with impulse control. We know this because the prefrontal cortex of their brain is not fully developed, and that's where it's governed. So they struggle with impulse control. They have the impulse to talk about their dog, and so it comes out their mouths. They do not have the ability like we do to think about,
like,
wait a minute. Like, should I hold that thought for a second and wait for a break in this conversation? I find I do that. I'll wait for a break in the conversation if it's on a different topic.
Yeah. Yeah. But
right?
then it never fully fits in sometimes. Yes.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I try to tell like the children sometimes, I'm like, because, when you're working with 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, they like to blurt out answers. And so I try to tell them ahead of time, like, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. And when you get the answer, I want you to keep it in your head, and some of them can do it. And some of them can't, but I feel like if I keep saying that, they're going to be like, oh, wait, maybe I can keep this thought in my head. And then when she calls on me, I could say it, but that takes a lot for children to get to that point. But I feel like if I could kind of model that, be like, okay, I'm thinking of it, but I'm not saying it out loud. I'm keeping it in my head. Now, oh, look, my teacher called on me, but it's it's really hard, you know, but like, I feel
really
like if I
hard
keep saying that,
for an
it's
adult.
enough for an adult to do it. Yeah.
You know, to teach children that sort of impulse control, we have to do a lot of other things first. Like there was this experiment that was done, a study that was done about whether physical activity and impulse control are, if there's any connection, can we use physical activity to teach it? The experiment that was done was using the age-old head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Did you ever hear about this, Allison?
Yeah, but I'm very interested now.
Okay. So they used head, shoulders, knees, and toes, but they told the children, when I say touch your head, touch your toes. When I say touch your toes, touch your head. And this helps to build impulse control, because the impulse is to do what you see, and they're teaching the children to do what you, right?
But you know, like,
to
okay,
do the
but there
opposite.
are adults that are still practicing this, only because like I have games on my phone that it's like, you know how like if it'll say like blue, but the bottom is yellow, and you're only supposed to say, yeah, like, does it match or does it not? And that's an impulse control thing too. But like,
that's
I'm
an
still
impulse control.
Yeah, but I'm still practicing like it in my brain now.
Right.
Okay. So why
what
do
we want
expect
from children?
Free to do it, you know? So
can't that just be a yes and? Can't that be, you've gone completely off topic, I will try and bring you back, I just have to look for the segue. You look for that segue to get them back.
Yeah. And
there are other
I feel like
yes
all
ands.
all these topics where they go off topic, that might be something in the future, but like, okay, they're really interested in pets. Maybe that's something for the future. Those are things I log in my brain of like, you know, those topics keep coming up. Maybe we need to do pets next, you know, or something, so that they can actually talk on topic about things that we're learning about. Yeah.
Right. So you keep it ticked away in your head. You've learned what they're interested in. Conversation with children who are verbal is often how we learn what they're interested in.
Yeah.
So that's like one example of a yes and. Children go off course in a conversation. It's not immediately bring them back, because that makes them feel like what they said or thought was insignificant. I'm going to yes and it. I'm going to find a way to attach it to something that might bring it back.
Yeah.
But there are other examples of yes and. There are examples of yes and among the adults. When a coworker does something a little different than you, and you think you have a suggestion for them, it's still yes and that's very respectful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because that's, everybody teaches in a different way. They have different philosophies, and you have suggestions, but you don't know the children that are in that classroom either. So yeah, it's very much a yes, and this could also help you, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yes. And have you tried this too?
Yeah.
Should be your colleagues.
Yes.
There are so many times in the course of my career when I have to listen to people's suggestions and be sort of like, I hear you, I get it, I understand XYZ. And so, yes, I hear you, and think about this. And it's very often and think about this, and give them time to process that.
Yes. Yes.
And as I said before, it's yes and with the families. Whatever they tell you happens at home, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And because you're not there, you don't know. You don't know what happens.
Yeah.
We make assumptions about what happens at home. We don't know. We're not there, and people behave differently in different places. So there are other episodes where we talk about navigating conversations with families. And if you're thinking, what are you talking about right now? I encourage you to go look for those on the podcast, because we talk about, you know, what do you do when the family doesn't see things the same way that you do? Mm-hmm. So you can find that in other episodes. There's yes and with the children too, in regard to their needs and wants, which may be different than your agenda. They may be hungry when it is not snack time. You know, some children get hypoglycemic and they can't control their behavior very well because they're hypoglycemic and they need a snack. I think we need to be flexible enough for that. I think we need to be able to say, okay, this child exhibits challenging behavior 45 minutes before every snack and meal. I've got to have something tucked away for this child.
Right. But I feel like sometimes, like, certain programs, they don't allow the flexibility. Like, they want the schedule to be the schedule.
Most don't. Yeah.
I know. And I think of myself as like an adult. Like I eat when I'm hungry, and it's not the same time every day some days, So like why is it like, nope, it's not 12:30, you can't eat yet. Like is like that's not the way life is, honestly. It's not. If I'm hungry at 11, I'm getting a snack, because you don't want Allison to be hangry. So
I think, well, that's true. But I think, unfortunately, when we do that, we're unfortunately getting them ready for the years ahead.
I know.
And they may not be physically developed enough yet to do that, or emotionally developed enough to do that. But here we are taking very young children. I mean, they start to, we as an early childhood workforce, we start to box young children into our schedule from very young ages. It's like the toddlers were starting to go, nope, it's not snack time. They're very, very young and should be listening to their instincts,
Yes.
And if you are documenting behavior and you realize this child does this every time there's like 30 minutes left till rest, we need to help that child to lower their energy level and to be calm.
Right.
If we realize this happens all the time, 45 minutes before we eat, we have to do something about that. That's another yes and. We can't just say tough luck. It makes everybody's life miserable.
Right. And that's just, to me, it's just not the way life is.
No.
It's just not.
It is, though. Think about elementary, middle, and high school.
I know, but it's not the way adult life is.
Isn't it, though? Do you not have work hours and a lunchtime?
Yeah, but I eat whenever. Yeah.
Well, that's you. But most people, most people have a schedule they have to keep. I understand teaching children about schedules. The question is, are our early learners, all of them who develop at different rates, ready for that schedule all at the same time, which is how we impose it. Instead of kind of going, okay, yes, and this child is ready, this child is not ready. Right. I know that would be difficult. I'm not unrealistic. I know that it would be very difficult to have a class filled with children, some who can follow the schedule, some who cannot. So we try to just get everybody to follow the schedule.
Yeah. And I think it's hard, like if you're in a mixed age group too, where like your older ones that are about to go to kindergarten, they might be ready to follow that schedule, but then you have some that are much younger who are not, and I feel like that makes it sometimes difficult because you're like, oh, here's a group that's ready because they're about to approach the elementary school soon, so they're ready for that. And then you have your little 3-year-olds who they're still kind of figuring it all out, it's hard.
It can be challenging, but I think we have to figure out how we drive what we do based on the individuality of the children. That's one of our ethical codes. We have to do everything based on their unique abilities, individuality, the child's needs. And it's, I think, especially hard in this world where we're all so short-staffed to be like, yes, and. But I will tell you what, those teachers who have told me that they have surrendered, they are fortunate enough to work in settings where they can do that. And they said, I have surrendered in some ways. I am like going with the flow of these kids like never before because we're short-staffed and I need to be more flexible. People have told me they've realized that they themselves are being too rigid, and that's why being short-staffed partially is freaking them out so much, that they need to just go with like the flow of the day. I've had a number of people say to me, so basically I've surrendered, and I do the best that I can to stick with what I know I'm supposed to do. At the same time, we're very short-staffed, and that needs to be recognized. And the way that I can get through that is the yes and, is the following the lead of the children. Making sure the children are joyful, engaged, and what's happening is play-based, just like we're supposed to for developmentally appropriate practice. I feel very fortunate because I work with a number of early childhood programs that have administrators who know the reality of life right now and who know, okay, they're not necessarily going to get to everything. And, but we have to do what's right for the children. The children are our mission. I think we sometimes lose sight of that. But again, I feel very fortunate to work with people who realize the children are the mission. And if we have to pivot, we have to pivot.
And then we pivot. Yeah.
It's like because in
that
Friends episode with the pivot.
Yeah.
Pivot. When you pivot, You will it's much, I think it is much easier. You know, teachers have told me they feel far less stressed because they have learned to pivot. I had a teacher tell me recently, she said, you know, of all the terrible things that have happened over the past few years, she said, you know, I try to find the good in things. And I think one of the good in things is that I myself have learned to be more flexible.
Yeah. It's a very good thing.
Yeah.
You know, flexibility.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
That's what the pivot is all about. And the yes, and it's being able to just simply react appropriately to what is happening in any given moment in a way that benefits the children's learning. And I mentioned before, your coworkers too, when you all get along, that benefits the children's working too.
Yeah.
When you're all respectful, that benefits the children too. Okay, so in full disclosure, Allison and I did not discuss ahead of time these statistics and who we are shouting out. In full disclosure, we did not discuss it before we started recording. So I'm just going to look at the list and shout it out just like that, Allison.
See? Like improv. There you go.
It is. We're going to do a little of our own flexibility improv. Allison is who keeps these records is about to yes and me, I hope. Okay. All right. So around the world, I have to say, we shouted out in another episode, Malawi, remember?
We have, yes.
We have shouted them out and they have moved up. They have moved up. So I feel like they're telling people. All right.
They must be.
Right? But right beneath them around the world in our statistics is Iceland.
No way. We've never done Iceland before.
Are you sure we've never done Iceland?
No, I'm not sure, but you want me to look? I'm pretty sure we've never done Iceland.
No, let's not keep the people waiting. I'm going to move right on to a state.
Because I'm pretty sure we haven't done them.
All right.
That's amazing, Iceland. Hi, Iceland.
Yeah. In the past 7 days, usually I have to be honest with everybody, in the number one spot in the United States in our ratings is usually like Texas or California, one of the larger states, right?
Yeah.
In the past 7 days, the number one has Texas and California. You were knocked out of the number one spot and replaced by Tennessee.
Oh, hello, Tennessee.
Tennessee. I don't recall if we've ever shouted that out before, but it's Tennessee. So hi, Tennessee, and thank you for being our number one in our ratings. We really appreciate it. Tell people in Tennessee and people around Tennessee and anybody you run into to do two things. Come and listen to How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast and check us out on Patreon, because our Patreon has patrons who are getting bonus content and blog and all that stuff. So please come and join our patrons. It is only, $5 per month or more, depending on what benefits you want to reap.
Yeah.
But, in full disclosure, most people pick $5 a month. I guess that's for many people are fortunate. And that's sort of like no harm, no foul, $5 a month, and we'll support.
And it gets you into a very good community of other learners and other teachers. And
you get the extra content,
right?
You get the extra content. And it helps to support what we're doing, which just like the milk and the bread in your supermarket and the gas prices, keeps going up. And we want to be able to continue to do what we're doing. So we so much appreciate your support. If you're already supporting us, please consider doing so. And we will catch you next time on the podcast, folks.
Bye, peeps.